15 years. That's how long it had been since Molly left. Not just left me, disappeared. No forwarding address. No divorce papers. Just vanished like smoke after a fire. The silence she left behind wasn't loud at first. Crept in gradually, the way frost sneaks across a windowpane. One day I woke up and realized no one had said her name out loud in years. Not my friends. Not my parents. Not even me. So when I got that email, a single line of text in an otherwise empty inbox, I stared at it for a full minute before even opening it. From Molly Benson. Subject, just a small thing. That name. I hadn't seen it in over a decade. Not on a screen, not on a letter, not in the corner of an old photo. It looked foreign. Like a word from a language I used to speak fluently but could no longer translate. I clicked. Hey Andrew. Sorry to reach out like this after all this time. I was wondering. Do you still have that old box I left behind? The one from the guest closet. It's important. That was it. No hello. No how are you? No explanation. Not even a damn period at the end. Just a lowercase question tossed into my life like a stone through a window. For a while I just sat there, staring at the message. I could see her face in my head, how she used to raise one eyebrow when she was asking for something but trying not to sound demanding. I could practically hear her voice in the tone of the message. The guest closet. I hadn't touched that space in years. When she left, I shoved everything of hers into boxes and stuffed them in there like a bad dream I didn't want to unpack. It became the closet where things went to disappear. Old yearbooks, Christmas wrapping paper, a broken vacuum, and apparently one very important box. Curiosity overruled pride. I walked down the hall to the guest room and opened the door. The room still had that faint lavender smell she used to love, from a diffuser I hadn't plugged in since 2010. The closet door creaked like it had arthritis. I reached up and pulled the chain for the light. Dust floated in the beam like ash. The box was there, all right, tucked behind a pile of winter coats and a broken lamp I always meant to fix. It was heavier than I remembered. Sealed with thick layers of masking tape, 3 passes, maybe 4. The corners were worn soft like an old book. I set it down on the bed, sat beside it and just stared. My heart was pounding, and I didn't know why. Maybe because opening that box felt like peeling back 15 years of scar tissue. I ran my fingers across the top, tracing the faded writing in Molly's handwriting. Andrew, do not open unless absolutely necessary. I almost laughed. What the hell did absolutely necessary even mean after everything? That's when I noticed it. Something thin and yellowed sticking out from underneath the bottom layer of tape, like it had gotten caught while she was sealing it. I slid it free gently, afraid it might tear. A receipt. A motel receipt. Bayview Motor Lodge. 2 nights. Paid in cash. Room 209. And there, in blocky, printed letters, were 2 names written in ink. Molly Benson. Mark Everett. My brother. I swear, the air left the room. For a long moment, I couldn't move. My eyes were locked on those names. My breath shallow. My brain was trying to come up with explanations, rationalizations, anything that didn't lead where I knew this led. But it was all there. Her name. His name. A motel room. Dated just 2 weeks before she vanished from my life. I sat back, letting the receipt rest on my knee. My hand was shaking. Of all the things I had wondered about over the years, whether she'd been kidnapped, joined some cult, hit by a bus, I never imagined this. This betrayal. This final twist of the knife. Mark and I had never been close, even as kids. We were one of those families where brother was just a technical term. I was always the second act to his headliner, the one who came in second, who got the hand-me-downs, who watched our parents beam at his football trophies while I quietly taped together my science fair ribbons. We hadn't spoken in almost 10 years. Not since a Thanksgiving dinner ended in shouting and a broken whiskey glass. I thought that rift had been about politics or old grudges, or maybe just 2 egos finally giving up on pretending to like each other. But maybe it was about Molly. Maybe it had always been about Molly. I stared at the box, the thick tape now seeming less like protection and more like a warning. I picked up my phone and opened the email. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I typed just 3 words and hit send. Found the receipt. Her reply came within minutes. I watched the notification flash on the screen, my pulse kicking up again. Andrew, please don't jump to conclusions. It's not what it looks like. The box isn't about that. It's about something else. Something more important. Please just read what's inside. More important than infidelity? Than a betrayal by the two people who meant the most to me in the world. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hurl the box across the room, watch it burst open like a dam breaking. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there for another hour, staring at the box like it might explain itself. I remembered the night she left, how she'd kissed me on the cheek and said she was heading to a conference in Portland. I remembered how I stood on the porch waving goodbye, watching the taillights disappear into the dark. She never came back. At first I called everyone, friends, colleagues, even hospitals. I filed a police report. They asked if we'd been fighting. We hadn't. Not exactly. But there were signs. There were always signs. Like the way she'd started locking her phone, even at home, or how she'd come back from business trips, smelling like cologne that wasn't mine, or the time I found a man's jacket in her trunk. She said it was a donation for Goodwill. I believed her, because I wanted to. But now, with this receipt in my hand and her name back in my inbox, every moment I doubted myself suddenly felt like vindication. I should have known. And still, a part of me wasn't ready to open the box. Because maybe she was lying again. Or maybe, just maybe, the truth was worse than anything I'd imagined. After I put the box back down on the bed, I sat there for what felt like hours. The motel receipt lay in front of me, like a nail pulled from a boarded-up memory. I kept running my thumb over the names, hoping they'd smudge, hoping I'd misread them. But it was real. Mark and Molly, together, in a room, 2 weeks before she vanished. I didn't open the box that night. Instead, I left it on the bed, shut the guest room door, and walked back to the kitchen in a daze. I poured myself a glass of water, then another, then something stronger. Bourbon. Neat. The kind I used to drink when things got hard, back when Molly and I were still pretending we were okay. Funny how memory works. Once one piece clicks into place, the others start snapping in like a jigsaw puzzle you thought you'd never finish. That receipt was the corner piece. And suddenly, all the other weird little moments from our marriage started rushing back in. The business trips. God, the business trips. Molly worked in marketing, events, conferences, that kind of thing. At least that's what she said. I'd always believed her because I wanted to, because belief was easier than confrontation. But now, every one of those trips looked different. There was one time in particular. She said she was headed to Dallas for a 3-day workshop. I remember how tense she seemed before she left. Her hands were shaking when she packed her bag. I offered to drive her to the airport and she flat out refused. Said she'd already called a cab, that she didn't want to trouble me. That struck me as odd, but I let it go. When she got back, she was different, distant. She stood in the kitchen making tea and didn't say a word to me for almost 20 minutes. I asked her how the workshop went, and she gave me some vague answer about brand integration strategies and too many PowerPoint slides. But when I hugged her, I smelled it. Cologne. Not mine. Something musky. Expensive. I asked her about it. She laughed. Oh, probably from the cab driver. He practically bathed in it. I let it go. Like a fool. Then there were the late nights at the office. Molly used to say she had meetings that ran over, deadlines that couldn't wait. But her company wasn't exactly NASA. It was a mid-sized agency that sold slogans to insurance companies. I remember one night in particular. She called around 6:30 and said they were finalizing a proposal and she'd be home late. I offered to bring her dinner. She hesitated. Said no, that they were ordering in and working straight through. When she got home after midnight, she was flushed, giggly, and reeked of red wine. We landed the client, she said, kicking off her heels. But when I checked her bag the next morning, there was no presentation folder, no contract copy, just a crumpled receipt from a wine bar. Another piece of the puzzle. Then there was her phone. She started locking it about 2 years before she left. That had never been a thing between us. We weren't one of those couples who snooped. We didn't need to, or at least I didn't think we did. I asked her once why she put a passcode on it. She told me it was for work. Said one of her clients was in the pharmaceutical sector and they had to follow HIPAA protocols, whatever that meant. At the time, I nodded. Now, it feels like I nodded through my own humiliation. And then there was the jacket. That damn jacket. It was in her trunk, buried under reusable grocery bags and an old gym mat. I found it by accident while loading groceries. A man's blazer. Dark gray, size large. Not mine. Not even close. The tag was from a high-end boutique in Seattle. The sleeves were too long, the shoulders too broad. I remember holding it up, confused. Molly came out of the house just as I was pulling it out. I showed it to her, eyebrows raised. "Oh, that," she said too quickly. "That's my coworker's. Steve. He left it at the last offsite. I said I'd drop it off next time I saw him." I asked if she wanted me to take it in. "No," she said. "He lives way out in Bellevue. I'll handle it." She took it from me and shoved it in the back seat. I never saw it again. At the time, I didn't press her. I wanted to believe her. That was the theme of our marriage, really. Me believing, her deflecting, and somewhere in between, the truth curled up and died. But now every one of those moments feels different. They don't just feel suspicious, they feel obvious. Like signs taped to a wall I refused to read. I walked back to the guest room, stood in the doorway, and stared at the box. I still hadn't opened it. The idea of seeing what was inside suddenly terrified me. Because if a folded piece of paper could shake my world like this, what else could be waiting under the tape? I picked up my phone again. Her last message sat there like a dare. "Please don't jump to conclusions. It's not what it looks like." I almost laughed. That phrase should be engraved on a cheater's tombstone. It's not what it looks like. Sure, it never is until it is. I tapped out a reply but couldn't hit send. Instead, I lay down next to the box and stared at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come. My thoughts kept racing, not just about Molly but about Mark. Mark, my brother, my blood. Growing up, he was the golden child. The quarterback. The prom king. The one who always had the charm, the girls, the spotlight. I was the backup plan. The second call. The afterthought. He used to joke that I was the test model and he was the upgrade. I laughed along because I didn't know how to push back. We weren't close, not really. He lived an hour away, worked in real estate, and always showed up to holidays late, half drunk, and full of stories about how insane the market was. He'd never liked Molly. Said she was too serious, too sharp, the kind of woman who'd eat you alive if you let her. That's what he said to me once, at my bachelor party, no less. Now, I wondered if that had just been projection. Maybe he said those things to distance himself from the guilt. Maybe it had already started back then. There's a photo from my wedding. Mark is standing next to Molly, his arm around her shoulders. I always thought his smile looked forced in that *T. Now, I wonder if it was something else entirely. Something darker. Was that the beginning? Did he see something in her that day? Did she? Or had it been brewing longer, beneath the surface behind closed doors when I wasn't looking? The receipt said Bayview Motor Lodge. That place was about 40 miles west. In a beach town we used to drive through on our way to Cannon Beach. It wasn't fancy. The kind of place you'd stay if you didn't want to be seen. God, how many times had they met there? Once? Twice? A dozen? I didn't want to know. But I needed to. Because now everything was infected with doubt. Every kiss. Every "I love you." Every lazy Sunday morning. All of it. Tainted. Fragile. And this box, whatever was inside, held the rest of the answers. Or the rest of the poison. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat by the window, the box unopened, the receipt on my lap, and my entire marriage unspooling in my mind like film melting in a projector. By sunrise, one thing was clear. Nothing I thought I knew was real. And if I wanted the truth, the whole messy, unvarnished truth, I'd have to cut the tape. The box sat unopened on the kitchen table for 3 days. I'd walk by it every morning like it was some wild animal I didn't want to startle. I'd make coffee, stare at the seams of the tape, and tell myself, tomorrow. But every tomorrow turned into another day of avoiding the thing that might finally destroy the last of what I believed about my past. It wasn't fear exactly. It was more like exhaustion. I was tired of rewriting my own memories, of finding landmines in moments I used to think were solid ground. Then, one afternoon, she showed up. No warning, no message. Just the sound of a car door slamming in the driveway and a knock on my front door like she'd never left. I opened it, and there she was, Molly. Older, but still recognizable. Her hair was shorter now, streaked with silver. She wore a thick gray coat and black boots that looked expensive. Her eyes, green like glass under sunlight, were the same but harder somehow. Like life had carved lines around them that hadn't been there before. I didn't speak. I just stepped aside. She hesitated, then walked in like she still knew the place. Her eyes flicked to the kitchen. She saw the box immediately. "I knew you still had it," she said softly. "I almost threw it out," I replied, even though we both knew that was a lie. She nodded, her jaw tightening. Then she looked over her shoulder and said, "Come on in." That's when I saw him. A man, early 30s, maybe. Tall, lean, with the kind of nervous posture you see in people who feel like they don't belong. He stepped inside slowly, scanning the room like it was sacred ground. "This is Jake," Molly said, her voice quieter now. "My son." I blinked. The word didn't register right away. "Your son," I repeated. Jake gave a small wave. "Hi." The room swayed slightly beneath me. I had to grip the back of a chair to steady myself. My mind scrambled through timelines, dates, math that suddenly felt like dynamite in my skull. "He's not," I started, but Molly cut me off gently. "We need to sit down." We did. Jake sat across from me, arms folded tightly across his chest like armor. Molly sat next to him. I stayed on my side of the table, the box between us like a loaded *P***N. "Jake was born 2 months after I left," she said. I stared at her. "So you left? Because you were pregnant?" "Yes." "And you didn't tell me?" "No. Couldn't." "Couldn't?" I scoffed. "That's what we're calling it now?" Molly looked down. I didn't know what to do. I was scared, confused, and there were other complications. "What kind of complications?" I asked, but I already knew. My heart was pounding like it wanted out of my chest. She slid a folder across the table. I didn't touch it. Jake spoke up for the first time. "I found the envelope in her closet. A few months ago. It had my birth certificate, a copy of a paternity test, letters, stuff she never told me about. That's how I found out about you." I looked at him. His voice was calm, but his hands trembled slightly. I tried to find a resemblance. He didn't look like me. Not obviously. But I wasn't ready to accept what I already suspected. "Molly?" I said, voice cracking. "Is he mine?" She closed her eyes, took a breath, then said it. "I don't know." 3 words. That was it. That was the floor giving way. I looked down at the folder. My fingers moved on their own. I opened it. Inside was a DNA test dated 15 years ago. Compared 2 profiles. One was Molly's. The other, labeled as alleged father, was my brother's, Mark Everett. The result? 99.8% probability of paternity. I felt cold all over. My vision blurred. "You slept with him," I said. Not a question. A statement. Molly didn't deny it. "It started after you and I began to fall apart," she whispered. "I didn't plan for it. I didn't expect." "Don't," I snapped. "Don't try to rewrite it into something tragic and romantic. He was my brother, and you were my wife." Silence. Jake looked between us, eyes wide. "I didn't know until a few months ago," he said. "I grew up thinking my dad just abandoned us. I didn't even know your name until I found the papers." Molly looked at me, tears threatening. "I wanted to protect him. From the truth. From Mark. From you hating me." I stood up. "You left me with nothing," I said. "Not even a note. I thought you were dead." I filed reports. I searched for you for years. And all this time you were raising his child? In hiding? It wasn't like that, she said quickly. Mark. He blackmailed me. I stopped. What? She pulled another paper from the folder, a letter. I recognized her handwriting. It was dated the night she left. In it, she said she had taken a secret paternity test after missing her period. She was scared. She suspected the baby might not be mine. She confessed that things with Mark had started slowly, texts, long talks, late nights when I was working. She said she hated herself for it, that she tried to end it, but Mark wouldn't let her. According to the letter, after she told him about the pregnancy, he threatened to tell me everything. To destroy my life, my career, my family's already shaky trust in me. He said he'd make sure Jake ended up with him. Not you. Said he'd spin it all in court, use your temper, your absences, anything he could. Panicked. I didn't know what to do, so I ran. I dropped the letter. Everything spun. Jake stood up slowly. He used the test against her, he said. Used me. I didn't know until I saw what he kept in his house. What? I asked. He pulled out his phone and tapped the screen. Here, he said. I went to see him after I found everything. Thought maybe he'd tell me the truth. Instead, he showed me a photo. It was a wall. No walls. Lined with recent photos of me, of Molly, of Jake himself. Candid sh*ts. Surveillance style. Dates scribbled beneath each one. Notes in sharp black ink. Timelines. Locations. Arrows. Circles. One photo had the words core connection written under it. In the center of the room was a table, and on it a folder labeled Custody Transfer Agreement. Forged documents. Signatures. A notarized letter claiming Molly had legally given Mark custody of Jake when he was a child. My stomach twisted. This is insane, I said, looking at Jake. He was building a case, Jake replied. Planning something. I think he was going to try and claim me, legally, retroactively, or blackmail Mom into coming back. I couldn't speak. The last piece of the puzzle had dropped into place. Mark hadn't just betrayed me, he'd engineered it. Created a fake reality where he was the victim, where he could control Jake's life. And Molly's. And mine. Molly looked at me, eyes red. I'm sorry, she said. I know it doesn't fix anything. I know I don't deserve anything from you. But Jake deserves the truth. I nodded, numb. Jake stepped forward. I didn't come here looking for a father, he said. I came looking for the truth. And now that I have it, I have to do something about it. He looked me dead in the eyes. I'm going to court. I waited until they were gone. Jake left first, saying he needed to clear his head. He asked if we could talk again. Just the two of us. After I had time to process everything. I told him yes, but the word felt hollow in my mouth. Molly stayed behind a little longer. She lingered near the door, like she was waiting for something. A signal, maybe. Forgiveness? Closure? I couldn't give her either. When she finally left, I just stood there, in the middle of the living room, still, silent, like the house was waiting for me to break. I didn't. Not then. Instead, I walked slowly back to the kitchen. The box was still there, still sealed, still daring me to face whatever else I hadn't been ready to face. And this time, I opened it. The tape peeled away with a slow, dry sound. I expected it to fight me, but it didn't. It gave easily, like it had been waiting to be undone. Inside was a mess of documents, papers, photos, envelopes, even a small wooden toy, the kind you'd give a baby to chew on. It looked worn, the paint faded. Jake's, I assumed. The top layer was covered with insurance forms and medical files. Old ones. One page caught my eye, a sonogram. The date lined up exactly 2 weeks before she disappeared. Scribbled in the top corner in Molly's handwriting were the words, "Please let this be enough." I kept digging. Beneath the files, I found a plain manila envelope. Inside was a letter. Thick, several pages. The paper had yellowed at the corners. It was dated the night she left. The handwriting was hers. Familiar, precise, curling a little at the ends like it always did when she was scared. I took a deep breath, sat down at the table, and began to read. Andrew, if you're reading this, I guess I finally did it. I finally disappeared. I don't know what you've been told. I don't know what you're feeling right now. But I hope, before you decide what to believe about me, you'll read this all the way through. I need to start with the truth. Yes, there was something between Mark and me. And yes, it happened while we were still married. It wasn't love. It wasn't even lust, not really. It was something colder, angrier. We had been fighting more, you and I. And Mark, he knew exactly when to show up, when to push, when to offer just enough attention to make me feel wanted again. He didn't come on like a wrecking ball. He came on like comfort. And I was weak. There's no excuse for what I did. I betrayed you. I crossed a line that I never should have even tiptoed toward. I told myself it was a one-time mistake, that I could live with it. But then I got pregnant. I told you it was yours because at the time I believed it might be. Or maybe I just wanted it to be. But the guilt started eating me alive. I couldn't look at you without wondering if I was living a lie. So I took a test. I paid cash. Used a clinic under a false name. When the results came back, when I saw Mark's name next to a 99.8% match, something in me shattered. I wanted to tell you. I swear I did. But I also knew what Mark would do. Because by then, he already knew. I never told him. I don't know how he found out. Maybe he followed me. Maybe he bribed someone at the clinic. I don't know. But he confronted me in a parking garage one night after work. He told me if I said anything to you, he'd destroy everything. He had documents. *TS. Letters he'd taken from our house. He even hinted at things he could plant, bruises, emails, accusations. He said he could spin the story so you'd look like the bad guy. That he'd make you lose everything. And I believed him. Because Mark has always known how to twist a knife while smiling. Panicked. I didn't know who to trust. I couldn't face you, not with that truth. Not when I'd already broken your heart and didn't even have the courage to tell you why. So I left. I packed a single bag and walked away from the only life I had ever built. I told myself it was to protect you. But the truth is I was protecting myself too. From shame. From judgment. From your eyes when they found out. I thought I could raise Jake quietly. That I could keep him safe. But Mark, he didn't stop. He started showing up. Not often, but enough. Car outside the house. A letter in the mailbox with no return address. A photo of Jake at school. I moved 3 times in the first 2 years. Changed my number. Used fake names. But he always found me. And every time the message was the same. You owe me. At one point, he offered to take Jake off my hands. Said I was too unstable. Said I'd never be enough of a mother to raise him right. That if I gave him up quietly, things could go back to normal. I told him to stay away. That's when the real blackmail started. I saved everything I could. The threats, the photos, even the fake custody paperwork he mailed me, signed with a forged version of my signature. I kept it all. I never meant to give it to you, but I couldn't throw it away either. So I sealed it in this box. I don't know if Jake will ever want to know you. I don't know if you'll want to know him, but he's good, kind, smart, stronger than I ever was. And I need you to know, I never stopped loving you. Not the real you, not the man I married. But I buried that love because I didn't deserve it anymore. If you hate me, I understand. If you burn this letter, I deserve that too. But if even a part of you still remembers the woman I was before all of this, then please don't let him win. Don't let Mark own the last piece of this story. Molly. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. Instead, I folded the letter and placed it gently back in the envelope. I stared at it like it might dissolve if I blinked too hard. My brother. My wife. My not son. The box had given me everything I didn't want. And everything I'd needed. Proof. Answers. Pain. And above all, clarity. Mark hadn't just ruined my marriage. He'd spent years trying to erase me. He forged signatures. Stalked Molly. Tried to turn Jake into some twisted trophy of dominance. This wasn't about love. It never was. It was about control. But not anymore. I stood up, walked to the fireplace, turned on the gas, watched the flames flicker to life. I held the motel receipt in my hand. The very first lie. I didn't burn it. Instead, I put it in a folder along with the letter, the DNA results, and every piece of documentation Molly left me. Because I had one more thing to do. And the next time I saw my brother, it would be in a courtroom. A week after I opened the box, Jake sent me a message. I'm going to see him. I need to know who he really is. I'll let you know what happens. I stared at the text for a long time before replying. Be careful. He's not who you think. But I knew it wouldn't stop him. Jake wasn't doing this for answers anymore. He was doing it to reclaim something. Maybe his identity. Maybe his story. Mark had written himself into all of our lives. As the hero, the rescuer, the rightful father, and Jake finally was ready to rip that part of the script away. I didn't hear anything for 2 days. Then, on the third night, Jake showed up at my door. He looked wrecked. His hoodie was damp from rain, and his eyes were red. He walked inside without a word, holding something wrapped in a grocery bag. I poured him a cup of coffee, but he didn't touch it. He sat at the table and unwrapped the bag. Inside were photos, dozens of them. His house, he said, voice quiet. I asked if we could talk. He let me in like he'd been waiting for it. Took me straight to this room in the back. Said he had something to show me. Called it a timeline of our bond. I picked up the first photo. It was of me outside my office, taken from across the street. I recognized the jacket I'd worn that day, the one I lost years ago. Another showed Molly leaving a grocery store. She looked over her shoulder like she'd heard something. Another, Jake himself, in high school, stepping off a bus. They were all recent, Jake continued. Every one dated, labeled, organized. He even had captions, notes, like he was documenting a science experiment. I looked at the back of one. March 4th, Jake alone again after class. Pattern consistent. Future instability likely. Felt like acid in my stomach. Jake slid over a separate folder. Inside were the forged documents. The same ones Molly had mentioned, but these were newer, cleaner. A whole legal dossier crafted to look like she'd signed over custody. Not from 15 years ago, from last year. He was going to use them, Jake said. Said he'd found a lawyer who'd make it stick. That Mom was emotionally unstable, and you were a non-factor. That I needed structure. His structure. I couldn't speak. I told him he was insane, Jake said, eyes narrowing. And you know what he said? I shook my head. He said, it's not insanity if I win. Jake leaned back, jaw clenched. He's not just a manipulator. He's obsessed. And he's dangerous. I believed him, but what chilled me wasn't the lies. It wasn't even the documents. It was the wall. Jake took out his phone and showed me the photos he'd taken inside Mark's house. Every wall in the room was covered, ceiling to floor, with images, clippings, timelines, circles drawn around Molly's face. Arrows connecting me to Jake, Jake to Molly, Molly to Mark. In the center, under a single overhead light, sat a desk with a folder labeled Reclamation Project. Inside were draft emails to lawyers, therapists, judges, letters to Jake, letters to me, all unsent, all written in the tone of someone who thought he was building something noble. A family made in his image. I scrolled through the photos in silence, and with every one, I felt something inside me snap loose. Mark hadn't just slept with my wife. He hadn't just fathered a child behind my back. He'd spent years trying to rewrite our lives, trying to control every narrative, every relationship, like we were characters in his personal novel. Jake must have seen the look on my face. I've already contacted a lawyer, he said. We're filing an injunction. And I gave the police copies of the forged documents. I finally looked up. Did you confront him? Jake nodded. I told him I wasn't a project, that he doesn't get to decide who I am or who my family is, and that I don't care what the DNA says. He's not my father. I swallowed hard. Jake glanced at the folder. He lost it, threw a chair, said Mom poisoned me, That you manipulated her into turning me against him. Then he begged. Then he screamed. He shook his head. I left while he was still ranting. He never followed. The room fell quiet for a long moment. Then I asked, "Why did you come here?" Jake looked me in the eyes. Because he tried to control everything. But he never asked what I wanted. He leaned forward. "I want to go to court. I want a record of this. Public. Official. I want the judge to see what he's done." I nodded. "Whatever you need. I'm with you." For the first time since he walked in, Jake exhaled. We spent the next few days collecting everything. The paternity test, Molly's letter, the photos, the documents, my statement, Jake's, even evidence from years ago. The email trail from Mark that Molly had saved in a flash drive at the bottom of the box. Jake's lawyer moved fast. Within a week, we had a court date. The day of the hearing, the courthouse felt colder than I remembered. Jake wore a suit that didn't quite fit, but he held himself like someone who'd stopped running from the truth. Mark showed up late. He wore a navy suit, hair slicked back, with a forced smile that never reached his eyes. When he saw me and Jake sitting together, the smile vanished. His lawyer was one of those fast-talking types, smug, polished, confident. But even he seemed unprepared for what we brought. Jake testified first. He stood tall, clear, calm. "My name is Jake Benson, and I am here to tell the court that Mark Everett is not my father. Not in any way that matters." He told the story. All of it. From finding the box, to meeting me, to Mark's manipulations, the photos, the forged custody documents. Every twist and every lie. The judge asked him a simple question. "If a DNA test says he is your biological father, why do you reject that?" Jake didn't blink. Because being a father is more than a test result. It's trust. It's honesty. It's choice. And he chose power over people. Every time. Then it was my turn. I kept it brief. I confirmed Molly's disappearance. The motel receipt. The letter. The DNA test. But I emphasized one thing. I thought I was Jake's father for 15 years. I loved him like a son. And honestly, I still do. That hasn't changed. What changed was the truth. And the truth is, Mark tried to steal him. The judge flipped through the file we'd submitted. His brow furrowed as he reviewed the signatures on the forged custody agreement. "This is crude," he said. "Barely passable as a forgery. Did you really believe this would stand up in court?" Mark's lawyer tried to pivot, but the judge cut him off. "I've seen enough." He turned to Mark. "You've presented forged documents. You've surveilled private citizens. You've constructed a false legal narrative. And now you stand here, asking this court to consider you a victim?" Mark finally stood up. His voice cracked. "I was protecting my family. They twisted my son against me." The judge stared at him. "No. You twisted yourself around a lie so tightly you started to believe it." Then he turned to Jake. "You have nothing to fear. The forged documents are null. And this case is being referred to the district attorney's office." Mark turned pale. 2 officers entered the courtroom. They didn't cuff him, but they flanked him as he was escorted out. He looked back once. Not at Jake, not at me, but at the empty seat where Molly would have been. And for a moment the mask cracked. Not guilt. Not sadness. Loss. He had played puppet master for years. And in one hearing his strings were cut. Jake and I stepped out into the hallway, both of us quiet. The weight of it all hadn't quite lifted. But it was shifting. Lighter. Less suffocating. Outside, the air was crisp. Fall had arrived. Leaves blew across the parking lot in spirals. Jake spoke first. "I feel like I've been holding my breath for 15 years. He looked at me. "But today, I finally got to exhale." I nodded. Then softly I said, "You know, I always wanted to be a dad." Jake smiled. "Looks like you still are." In court, Mark's forged custody papers are exposed as fraudulent. Jake testifies that Andrew, not Mark, is his true father, not by blood, but by choice. The judge rules in Jake's favor and refers Mark for criminal investigation. As Mark is escorted out, his facade crumbles. For Andrew, it's the first time in years that truth triumphs over manipulation. And he feels, at last, that justice has been served. Outside the courthouse, Jake tells Andrew that 15 years of silence nearly broke him. But the truth gave him the power to choose his real father. They leave together, no longer bound by the past, but by a decision to move forward as a family. Molly watches from a distance, realizing too late that her lies cost her both the men she once cared about. She walks away alone, the box now empty, her chapter closed.